Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into the sands of ancient Oxyrhynchus, Egypt.
It's a fascinating site.
Absolutely. And our mission is, well, to pull out the most intriguing insights into their funerary rituals. We're working from a really detailed lecture transcript by Mate Mascourt.
From the Casa de Cultura de Girona, yeah, it's packed with information.
Think of this as your shortcut, really, to understanding thousands of years of archaeology there, from the Greco-Roman times right through the Ptolemaic era.
And Oxyrhynchus, it's been under excavation since '92, so there's a huge amount of material.
So many stories buried there. We're here to explore the best bits with you.
Well, the lecture title itself, Continuity and Evolution of Funerary Practices, kind of gives us the main theme right away.
Right. Continuity and evolution. So things changed, but some things stuck around.
Exactly. And the first observation, finding Roman stuff above Greek stuff in the digs, that's just the layers of time, basically, how sites like this work.
Okay, so let's dig into those layers. The lecture mentions a really big shift in how people were buried. Initially, you had mummification, influenced by the Greco-Romans, but also looking back to older pharaonic ways.
Right. Preserving the body was key.
But then Christianity arrives and, well, mummification mostly fades out. Their beliefs about the afterlife, the body's role, it just wasn't the same emphasis.
It's a fundamental shift in worldview, really, tied directly to adopting Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, too, is how the earlier Greek colonists, under Alexander, they quite readily picked up Egyptian customs.
Like using necropolises,
Yeah.
big cemeteries.
Exactly. Instead of cremation, which was more their tradition back in Greece, the lecture points out only 2 Greek cremation sites found in Oxyrhynchus, which is, well, pretty rare for Egypt.
So that adaptation happened quite early on.
Right from the get-go, you see this mix.
Okay, location. The lecture really paints a picture of Oxyrhynchus. It's about 190 kilometers south of Cairo.
Yeah, on the Bar Yusuf, which is a branch off the Nile heading towards the Fayum. And importantly, it was a river port.
Connecting it to trade roads, like with the Western oases. Bahariya, for instance.
Precisely. You have to imagine it as this bustling hub, a real meeting point for different cultures, different goods, ideas.
And that definitely shows up in the archaeology.
It does, and the site itself is huge. You've got different areas of fortified monastery, the high necropolis, almost like separate digs happening.
Okay, and for us today, we're mainly focusing on that high necropolis and a newer sector.
That's the plan. Some really remarkable finds have come out of there recently.
Okay, remarkable finds. Let's jump into the Roman tombs. I thought the detail about using kites for aerial photos was pretty neat.
Yeah, a clever workaround. Apparently it's a military zone, so drones are restricted. But the kites help them map things out.
And help them fine-tune 4 again, which they re-excavated. And it paid off.
It certainly did. Finding that amazing Roman-style mask, it was covering a mummy, though only the mask itself survived.
Wow.
It really speaks to the artistry, but also the beliefs. And the use of gold here in the Roman to Byzantine period is interesting. Well, in pharaonic times, gold was mostly reserved for pharaohs, right? But here it seems more widespread. This mask, it kind of suggests a broader desire to connect with those older pharaonic ideas about eternal life.
Emulating the pharaohs in a way?
Perhaps, yeah, aspiration. And then there's Tomb 3. The lecture goes into detail about its wall paintings.
Dating from, what, 1st century BC to 1st century AD?
Right, and these paintings are just packed with symbols. They're not just decoration. They're like reading a theological text on the wall.
Okay, so what are we seeing?
Well, you've got the Gede pillar, the classic symbol of Osiris, stability, resurrection. Then the 4 funerary genii, the sons of Horus who protect the organs.
Right, like in the canopic jars.
Exactly. You also see stylized vine leaves linked to Osiris again. And then, really interestingly, 2 fish facing each other.
Okay, fish.
Yeah, the Oxyrhynchus fish and the Lapido fish, flanking a lotus flower.
Hold on. The Oxyrhynchus fish that's connected to the city's name, isn't it?
Precisely. The lecture explains the Lapido fish is linked to the sun, while the Oxyrhynchus fish has this funerary meaning. And yes, the city, Oxyrhynchus, is named after that fish deity.
Wow. And the name changed over time. Permijet, then Oxyrhynchus, then Pemji?
That's right. Reflects the different dominant cultures.
So back to the tomb paintings. We've got these fish, Osiris himself.
Yes, Osiris flanked by his sisters, Isis and Nephthys. And there's Anubis, the jackal-headed god, offering a broad collar, an egg.
It feels very traditionally Egyptian, even in the Roman period.
It does. But the lecturer emphasizes that this specific image, the 2 facing fish, the Oxyrhynchus and Lapido, That seems to be unique to this site.
A local twist.
The local flavor, yeah, suggests a specific belief or story they had there.
The lecture also mentioned other Roman tombs. Stone-built, sometimes with shafts or stairs.
Yeah, linking down into maybe a vestibule and often 3 chambers. Seems like a common layout there.
And inside, mummies often covered in cartonnage. That's the plastered linen stuff.
Right. Layers of linen or papyrus stiffened with plaster, then painted. And here you see that cultural blend again.
Oh, so?
Well, the decoration still uses a lot of pharaonic motifs, but the faces, the hairstyles on the cartonnage, they start looking less typically Egyptian. Sometimes they even look a bit like those famous Fayum portraits.
Ah, okay. So Roman influence on the portraiture, Egyptian on the symbols.
It's a real synthesis. And the wrapping itself was often very intricate, bandages laid in geometric patterns. Shows real care.
That must be tough excavating that. The lecturer mentioned colors fading really fast.
Oh, absolutely. A huge challenge. As soon as they're exposed to air and light, the colors can just vanish, so restorers have to be right there, ready to intervene immediately.
Wow. And then there were those papyrus packets, placed on the bodies, sealed with mud.
Yes. Found on the chest or sometimes the pubic area. Really intriguing.
What do they think was inside?
That's the big question. The seals suggest something important, something meant to be kept safe. Maybe prayers, magical texts, personal letters, even legal documents for the afterlife. We don't know for sure yet.
But it connects to Oxyrhynchus being famous for papyri, right? The city of papyri.
Exactly. Over 500,000 papyrus fragments found there in the 19th and 20th centuries, giving us incredible insights into daily life, literature, administration, everything.
So they're trying to connect the tomb finds with what's written in the papyri.
That's the ongoing effort. Imagine finding a tomb and then finding a papyrus that actually names the person buried there or describes their family or business. Linking the archaeology and the texts, that's the dream.
Okay, to really get the symbolism, the lecture briefly touched on the Osiris myth. It's pretty central to all this.
Absolutely essential background. The key points are Osiris ruling the fertile land, his jealous brother Seth ruling the desert.
Seth tricks him into a sarcophagus and drowns him.
Right. Then Isis and Nephthys find the body. The djed pillar becomes the symbol of his backbone, of stability restored. But Seth isn't done.
He chops him up.
Grim stuff. Yeah, dismembers him into, depending on the version, 14 or 42 pieces, scatters them across Egypt.
And Isis and Nephthys have to collect them all.
Except, famously, the penis. According to Plutarch's version, it was eaten by an Oxyrhynchus fish.
Ah, there's the fish again.
Exactly. So Isis makes a wooden replacement to conceive their son, Horus, or Harpocrates, as the child god.
But the lecture mentioned a newer theory.
Yeah, a slight variation where the fish, seen as female, swallows the part, allowing it to regenerate within the fish, so Osiris can be made whole for the first mummification.
Okay, that's interesting.
It helps explain why the main local deity of Oxyrhynchus wasn't Osiris himself, but the goddess Thuris, who was identified with that female Oxyrhynchus fish, often shown wearing a female crown. It all ties back to that local fish cult.
Fascinating how it all connects. Okay, moving on with Roman finds. Gold tongues. Inside the mummy's mouth.
Yes, and finding 28 of them in Oxyrhynchus is really significant. Usually you might find 1 or 2 at other sites, if any.
Why? What were they for?
The thinking is they weren't just amulets. They were meant to protect the vocal cavity, to ensure the deceased could speak during the judgment of Osiris.
To recite the negative confessions. I have not killed, I have not stolen.
Exactly. To declare their innocence before Osiris. The sheer number found here suggests this part of the judgment, the speaking part, was maybe especially important in Oxyrhynchus' beliefs.
Wow. And seals on papyrus packets saying eternal life.
Yeah.
Very direct.
Very direct. It really drives home their focus on the afterlife.
And the lecture mentioned finds from a new sector opened in 2023, Sector 65.
Yeah, ongoing work yielding more insights. Things like small gilded plaster buttons mixed in with the mummy bandages.
To make it look like the body was golden.
That seems to be the idea, creating this illusion of a divine, incorruptible body for the afterlife. There's a comparison to a really well-preserved mummy from Hawara that shows this clearly.
But they also found evidence of tomb robbing.
Unfortunately, yes. Mummies disturbed, holes cut near the heart area, presumably thieves looking for the heart scarab amulet, which was considered vital.
A constant problem, I guess.
Always has been. They also found many more seals, some still attached to papyrus bundles tied with cord, again, often with that eternal life inscription. Some seals had images like hairs or figures that look a bit like pharaohs.
And more gold tongues turning up in the recent finds.
Yes, confirming this was a persistent practice there.
What about gold fingernails and gilded hands and feet?
Also found, which immediately makes you think of pharaonic practices, right? Like Tutankhamun had gold thimbles or stalls on his fingers and toes.
Definitely. So a continuation of that idea.
It seems so. They even found two different types of gold nail coverings, one type having more plates than fingers, which is a bit curious. Maybe spares or symbolic.
And other finds like gilded pectorals, the chest covering.
Yes, from tombs 60-65. Again, showing typical pharaonic decoration on the cartonnage, that strong link back. Also, a small terracotta figure of Harpocrates, Horus the Child.
Then there was that late mummy example, 2nd century AD, the one who looked different.
Yes. Clearly a male, but his features aren't typically Egyptian. He has a mustache, he's wearing clothes that look like a Roman magistrate's. You can see the purple decorations indicating status.
While wearing traditional sandals.
Right. It's this fascinating mix. Who was he? Where was he from? He's buried with some Egyptian rites, but clearly has Roman status markers.
A real puzzle. Shows the diversity of Oxyrhynchus.
It really does. A reminder of the complex cultural interactions happening there.
Okay, now the lecture shifts gear to something really exciting.
Yeah.
The discovery of the Ptolemaic necropolis. Just in 2023-2024.
That's right. Very recent. And apparently the dig was prompted by the Antiquities Service because they were worried about looting in that area.
Good thing they stepped in.
Absolutely. And this turned out to be a whole separate burial area distinct from the Roman sectors we've been talking about. Mostly underground tombs, hypogea.
Right, hypogea, like underground chambers.
Exactly. They started finding these narrow wells in Sector 40. Initially a bit confusing, but they realized these were likely ritual entrances, or maybe exits, for the hypogea below, often with a blocked doorway at the bottom facing east.
And Hellenistic figurines turned up. Isis Aphrodite.
Yes! A really major find. These are the first ones found in Oxyrhynchus, and it's the furthest south this type of figurine has ever been discovered.
Wow. What does that suggest?
Well, it points to cultural links, probably with the Fayum region further north where these are more common. It shows the spread of this kind of Hellenistic religious fusion, blending Greek and Egyptian deities.
So inside these hypogea, like Hypogeum 4.
The layout was interesting. The well led to 3 chambers or balms and a vestibule. Similar in plan, actually, to some later Roman tombs, like Tomb 11 mentioned earlier, maybe some continuity in design ideas.
And filled with mummies?
Accumulations of them, yeah. Suggests maybe family tombs used over time, but the conditions are tough.
The water table, humidity?
Very high. Causes a lot of deterioration, makes excavation incredibly delicate. Mummies, cartonnage, it all suffers.
What did they find in Hypogeum 4 despite the conditions?
Well, in the south chamber, 2 open sarcophagi, bodies disturbed, but in the north chamber they found closed sarcophagi with undisturbed mummies placed on top of them.
On top.
Yeah. And when they carefully opened those sarcophagi, they found 2 more mummies inside, quite well preserved, though fragile, and they had gilded masks.
Amazing.
And it highlighted a Ptolemaic practice. Sometimes, instead of super elaborate sarcophagi, they focused on really well-prepared bandages adorned with painted templates.
Templates? Like stencils?
Sort of, yeah. Featuring classic symbols, Djed pillar, the Isis knot, Osiris pectorals, often using that vibrant Egyptian blue pigment, and they often wrap the legs separately.
Any info on the mummies themselves?
Initial thoughts were maybe male and female based on appearance, but later analysis showed it was a woman about 60 and a man around 40. Both apparently had some signs of disease, pathologies, offers a glimpse into their health.
Then they found another well nearby.
Yes, not as well built. It had a basket inside, fragments of a decorated jar they managed to restore, and the doorway at the bottom was better sealed.
And a surprise inside the well itself?
A big one. The well shaft was filled with stone blocks that turned out to belong to a Roman-era chapel that must have been nearby.
Destroyed and used as fill.
Seems like it. A fascinating example of reusing materials and spaces, and some blocks were decorated a rare Latin inscription for Oxyrhynchus, painted decoration imitating marble, and more of that pharaonic Roman mix. Horus with a solar disk next to Roman-style columns.
Incredible layers of history. What about Hypogeum 5?
Found right next to Hypogeum 4. No Isis Aphrodite figures here, but lots and lots of deliberately broken ceramic perfume bottles, Arabaloi.
That Egyptian ritual practice again.
Exactly, breaking them so they couldn't be reused by the living, dedicating them to the dead.
And mummies.
Yes, towards the end of the season, they found 3 mummies in the south chamber. One had tiny bracelets and anklets, maybe amulets, but in poor shape. Another had an unusual concentration of amulets found together.
All kind of amulets.
Really typical Ptolemaic ones. 2 triads showing Isis and Nephthys with the child Horus, Harpocrates. Figures of various other gods, more Djed pillars. The protective Ujat eyes for healing. Beautifully made faience, apparently still shiny.
So lots of protective magic.
Definitely. One individual seemed to only have a heart scarab, which is also significant. Hypogeum 5 itself was larger than 4, with a central vestibule. And finding a small cartonnage fragment and a Ptolemaic Araballus right at the end helped confirm the dating.
Seems like wells are everywhere. They found another one.
A bigger one, higher up in the excavation area. This one had notches cut inside, like footholds for climbing down. Byzantine pottery near the top, suggesting later activity.
But reused earlier, too.
Seems so. They found a burial of a small child partway down, which looked Roman, and right at the bottom, a Roman ring.
So Ptolemaic origin, reused in Roman and Byzantine times.
Possibly. And again, a blocked doorway at the bottom facing east. This one led to a chamber just packed with mummies, and apparently the smell was overpowering.
Oh, wow. Hazard of the job.
Definitely. They needed better masks. Luckily, some diving masks arrived quickly, but they decided to leave the very end of that tomb, Tomb 66, until next season because the air circulation was just too poor. Safety first.
Smart move. So, Tomb 67.
Nearby. Initial finds included a couple of coins, 1st and 3rd century AD, again suggesting maybe later use or disturbance, but also a really interesting Ptolemaic offering found together.
What was that?
A lump of pure Egyptian blue pigment, some burnt animal bones, and a coal pot still with traces of the black eye makeup and the little wooden stick used to apply it.
A cosmetic offering.
Seems like it. Then, at the bottom of another doorway, Hellenistic period this time. Tomb looks similar to 66, but they could see something inside.
In the layout.
3 chambers again. North chamber, lots of mummies on the floor. 2 broken, looted sarcophagi. South chamber also not studied yet due to time, but the central chamber. That was the prize.
Why? What was in there?
4 sarcophagi, more mummies placed on top of them, and paintings visible from the doorway, which is highly unusual for Oxyrhynchus, especially from the Hellenistic period.
Paintings. Okay, this sounds big.
It was. Conditions were terrible, 96, 97% humidity, high temperatures, condensation everywhere. They couldn't even take photos at first.
Must have been frustrating.
Extremely. They carefully excavated the mummies on top. Some didn't have amulets, but had significant amounts of gold leaf applied directly to the bandages. One inside a sarcophagus even had a gold triangle placed over the pubic area.
More gold.
Yes. Gilded masks too, but the real excitement was discovering paintings inside the sarcophagi and, most importantly, on the walls of the chamber itself.
Wall paintings from the Hellenistic period. Tell us about them.
Okay, so the east wall, the one you see as you enter. It shows the deceased represented as Osiris wearing a mask. There's geometric decoration, the bay bird, the soul hovering nearby. A priest wearing an Anubis mask performs rituals on the mummy. Isis and Nephthys are there, mourning.
Standard themes, but...
But here's the exceptional part. The faces of the deceased, the goddesses, even the bay bird, they all have gold leaf applied.
Wow. Gold faces.
Incredible detail. The deceased is lying on a funerary bed shaped like a lion. The lion's face also has gold leaf. Above this scene, there's a frieze of jackals, Anubis again, facing the tomb entrance protectively, and a solar disk with rays at the very top.
Just stunning. What about the other walls?
West wall, opposite the entrance, guardians. The god Bes, shown with striking blue eyes. Anubis again, and Sobek, the crocodile god, both holding knives, protecting the doorway.
Makes sense.
Above them, another frieze with Anubis facing the door, the sacred Apis bull with a solar disk between its horns, and the deceased again identified by inscriptions as a priest named Anefer with his bay bird behind him.
Anefer. So we have a name.
We do. Now, the south wall. Part of it shows the sky goddess Nut. You can identify her by the hieroglyph for her name and a vase symbol, Nu. She's shown emerging from a sycamore tree, which is often linked to Osiris and rebirth.
Offering sustenance?
Yes, she's offering cakes and water, the hieroglyph for life. Zang from the vase to Anefer. There's a slightly odd detail with another painted vase nearby where the colors seem inverted. Then, still on the south wall, something really unusual for a private tomb. Anefer is shown holding hands with a procession of deities. This is usually reserved for pharaohs.
So elevated status. Or aspiration.
Could be either.
Yeah.
The last figure in the line is Mot, goddess of truth, offering the Ankh, the key of life, to Osiris himself. And Osiris looks magnificent. His vase is gold-plated. Behind him is the goddess Hathor, but she's wearing the crown associated with the female Oxyrhynchus fish deity.
Ah, bring in the local goddess again.
Exactly. And there's a detailed depiction of Isis nearby, too.
Okay, so east, west, south. What's on the north wall?
More fascinating scenes. Another inverted vase. A goddess, the inscription says Isis, but she looks a bit like Hathor, offering life and food to Nefer. Then Nefer is shown seated before a sun priest who's performing the opening of the mouth ceremony.
The ritual to allow the mummy to speak, eat, breathe again.
That's the one. And the priest is holding something unusual. A ship's sail, thought to represent the cool north wind needed for comfort, and an Ankh symbol again, giving the Ankh directly to a private individual, is rare in this period. Usually it's gods giving life to other gods or pharaohs.
So a Nefer is depicted receiving life directly.
It seems so. There's also an offering table scene with Osiris and Isis or Hathor behind it.
And the ceiling, anything there?
Oh yes, the celestial vault.
Okay,
Absolutely spectacular. It shows the sun's daily journey across the sky using 3 solar barks or boats on each side.
Sunrise, noon, sunset.
Precisely. The first bark, for sunrise, has the scarab beetle, Khepri, representing the newly born sun, emerging from an egg. Various gods are with him. The central bark is for midday, carrying the main solar disk, Re, with other deities. The last bark shows the sun god as Atum, old and tired, leaning on a staff, arriving in the west at sunset.
The whole cycle.
The whole cycle. And there are detailed images related to the sun's journey, like the sun containing the child Horus with his finger to his mouth, protected by deities, including the frog goddess Hecate, who aided birth. Also benevolent Mahan serpents coiling around the sun god for protection, and Afre, a funerary form of the sun god, being helped by Canids to reach the land of the dead.
It's incredibly detailed.
And the most stunning part of the ceiling might be the depiction of Nut, the sky goddess. She's stretched out nude across the vault, spanning between the eastern and western horizons. She's shown swallowing the setting sun.
Swallowing the sun.
Yes. And the paintings depict the sun's journey through her body overnight, to be reborn from her, from her vagina at dawn. The pubic area is clearly marked. You see the winged solar disk emerging the new day.
Wow, that's graphic and powerful.
Absolutely. And between her outstretched arms is the Shun sign, a symbol of eternity and protection encircling the sun's path.
This tomb sounds unbelievable. Unique for Oxyrhynchus, you said.
Completely unique. The quality, the preservation, the iconography, the use of gold leaf.
Yeah.
Nothing like it has been found there before from this period. The 3D photos they showed apparently really convey how magnificent it is, even though the chamber itself is quite small.
Just incredible. It really highlights the importance of teamwork in these excavations.
Oh, definitely. The lecture made a point of acknowledging all the specialists involved: archaeologists, restorers, epigraphers, anthropologists. It takes a village, or maybe a small town, to pull something like this off.
And seeing a picture of their excavation house out in the desert kind of brings it back to earth, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The hard work behind these amazing discoveries.
It really does. A huge amount of effort, often in difficult conditions, and relies heavily on sponsors, of course.
Well, this deep dive, drawing on Make Mascort's fantastic lecture, has been, frankly, mind-blowing, journeying through these centuries of belief at Oxyrhynchus.
From the Roman adaptations to these stunning Ptolemaic or maybe early Roman, under strong Ptolemaic influence, paintings in Tomb 67.
It gives such a vivid connection to how these people faced death and thought about the afterlife.
It really does. That fundamental human question, what happens next? And seeing the art, the rituals, the effort they put into ensuring eternity, it's profound.
And knowing that work continues, that there might be even more discoveries waiting beneath the sands.
Exactly. Oxyrhynchus clearly still has many secrets to reveal. It really encourages you to keep learning about Egyptian funerary beliefs and the ongoing archaeology.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. A huge thank you for joining us on this exploration of ancient Oxyrhynchus. We hope you found it as captivating as we did.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Until next time.